from a station working for you. This is WRTV News at 5:30, streaming now.
And now 5:30, nonprofits are helping to fill big gaps for families during the pandemic, but they need help to keep helping you. The money that's available, but the clock is ticking.
Top in our lineup, as kids across the country head back to school, education experts are calling on mentors to help, why they may be the key to helping students stay engaged. Also, cities are begging the federal government for more money to help people who can't pay their mortgages or rent, how some communities are trying to get creative while they wait. And black women are earning a lot less than white men. Black Women's Equal Pay Day today highlights the gap, how the pandemic could be making this worse, and how it may be a wake-up call to fix it.
The Rebound Indiana is our initiative that helps connect you to resources during the pandemic. And tonight, there is grant money available from the United Way of Central Indiana and the City of Indianapolis for nonprofit organizations, but the deadline is this Saturday. Our Nicole Griffin reports the money will reimburse costs these organizations have had to spend on safety measures during the pandemic.
The grant money is already helping nonprofit organizations across the city of Indianapolis, including St. Mary's Child Center. After being closed down for months during the pandemic, the center reopened their doors on Wednesday. For the last several months, this outdoor play area at St. Mary's Child Center has been empty.
It feels so wonderful to have the kids back. You can feel the joy of the children in the building. Also, the joy of the adults.
Connie Sherman is the executive director. She says most of the parents that bring their kids to the daycare are non-essential workers and have stayed home with their children.
We're so grateful to the United Way in the city of Indianapolis. St. Mary's serves a lot of children who come from poverty. Most of our kids come on scholarship.
The center has raised money to be able to provide 70% of the children with a scholarship. That is why the Restart grant money has been such a big help, since they don't have a lot of extra funding to spend on cleaning and safety measures during the pandemic.
We received $10,000 in this grant, and I don't know how we would have done it without it.
With the grant money, they were able to pay for professional cleaning services and purchase supplies they hope will last throughout the end of the year. But despite all of these steps, Sherman says some parents haven't brought their kids back and they aren't at full capacity.
They're nervous. They're very nervous. I think they want to see what happens. Maybe some of them are waiting a little bit. I can understand that. I'm a grandmother right now, and I have 4 grandchildren that I am worried about what's going to happen to them.
There are 50 spots still open at the center. Throughout the day, kids are kept in small groups, and before parents even drop them off, they get their temperature taken and go through a screening process. Working for you, Nicole Griffin, WRTV.
To apply for the Restart Grant Program, you must be a nonprofit located in Marion County. We'll put a link to the application process and other requirements on WRTV.com. Kyle?
Looking out over Indianapolis, quite a few clouds around the area today, but temperatures still taking off, still feeling very much like summer and August here in central Indiana, and many areas not dealing with any rain out of those clouds. Right now, it's 83 degrees downtown, but enough of that humidity that it does feel just a couple degrees warmer. 85 for that heat index, and temperatures around central Indiana. Bedford right now coming in at 87. I would expect next hour that will drop as you have been dealing with some rain. It's 82 in Richmond and Lafayette right now, coming in at that 85-degree reading. And there you can see on radar where we do have the more active weather. We've had this one thunderstorm that's been sitting around Bedford and Lawrence County, just kind of drifting, but it's starting to make a little bit of progress. But where it has been raining over about the last hour or so, you can see closing in on about 1.5 inches of rainfall here west and southwest of the Bedford area. So fortunately, we're going to see that waning, but we have had a few very light showers making their way toward Crawfordsville, also around Petersburg. But again, that's going to be very isolated for us. Most areas just dealing with those mostly cloudy skies. Our temperatures still very warm. We're still in the 80s through 9 o'clock, 78 degrees as we get to 10 with a very light wind. And the new drought monitor out today shows those dry conditions from Lafayette, Kokomo, Muncie to the north. The rest of us in pretty good shape. We'll talk about the return of rain chances in a few minutes.
The United States is getting involved in the investigation into what happened in Beirut. Lebanese authorities asked the FBI for help, and now a U.S. diplomat says they will work alongside other international investigators. It is still not known what caused the explosion of nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate stored for years in Beirut's port. But documents show the country's top leadership, as well as security officials, were aware of the stockpile. And the number of unemployment applications fell below 1 million for the first time since the pandemic began. Applications fell to 963,000 last week, according to the Labor Department. However, we are still at high unemployment levels. Before the pandemic, the weekly record was at under 700,000 unemployment applications. President Trump is still against mail-in voting. Today, he told Fox News that funding mail-in voting will not be a part of stimulus negotiations. Democrats want more than $3 billion for mail-in voting and $25 billion for the United States Postal Service. But the president maintains that mail-in voting is linked to voter fraud. Experts say up to 70% of voting will be done by mail this year due to the pandemic, but expensive equipment is needed to process those ballots. The Postal Service has warned government leaders that it will not adjust delivery standards regarding mail-in voting. In a letter, the USPS urged Washington state to use more expensive first-class mail to make sure ballots are prioritized. Otherwise, voters could be at risk of not receiving their ballots in time, and their return could then be stalled. New concerns about how COVID-19 is spreading. China is reporting that some frozen meat and packaging of imported foods tested positive for coronavirus. Meanwhile, New Zealand, which had no cases for more than 100 days, is investigating if the virus was reintroduced through imported freight. We know that the virus can show up on packaging materials anywhere from just a few hours to 4 or 5 days. It all depends on the material as well as environment. Right now, there's no evidence anyone has caught the virus from food or packaging. The virus only becomes weaker outside of a host. It may be possible, though, that a person can get COVID-19 by touching a surface or object that has the virus on it, even if they then touch their mouth, nose, or eyes. But this is not the main way the virus spreads. Back to our lineup. As kids across the country head back to school, education experts are calling on mentors to help, why they may be the key to helping students stay engaged.
Many people who have suspended driver's licenses because they haven't paid child support want to do the right thing, and about 135 people in Marion County want to step up payment plans to drive legally again as part of the Marion County Prosecutor's Good Faith Initiative. RTV6's Rafael Sanchez spoke to Prosecutor Ryan Mears about how it's going.
Based on the numbers, are you surprised that people are coming forward, they're self-reporting and saying, yes, I owe you money, but I want to get this fixed for myself, for my kids, and my family?
Well, I think it speaks to people are willing to take advantage of resources when you offer them. And when you offer opportunities to people to improve themselves or put them in a better position, I found that people are very willing to accept those challenges and those opportunities. And that's what we've seen with this program. And to me, it's just an encouraging sign that there are so many people who want to do the right thing, who want to be involved in their kids' life, who want to make good on their financial obligation, but are being held back for a number of different reasons. And if we're in a position to reduce those barriers, we're going to do that because, again, we're trying to help people.
To this program, you can call the Good Faith Hotline at 317-327-2700. The Good Faith campaign ends this month and then will be reviewed. Back in December, 105 people signed up. You can also find the phone number on your screen on the RTV6 app.
School districts that are allowing in-person learning are also strictly enforcing quarantines. Staff and students in at least 5 states have gone into quarantine since school started. That's after some schools reported positive test results. The quarantines in some places forced what was supposed to start as in-person learning to move to virtual only. And disadvantaged students that didn't have a good or any experience with virtual learning need more than a device and internet access. They need a mentor.
It means something when you have somebody who is an adult that you can trust, who is not only praising you when you are doing well, but getting mad when you are doing something, when you're late to turning something in, where you are not showing up, who is checking in on you. And that is hard work, but that is the necessary new normal that we need to walk into if we are going to truly address these issues of equity.
Ray Saldana is head of communities in schools. The nonprofit has trained site coordinators all over the country in 2,500 Title I schools, working alongside staff, but also with the most vulnerable students. When the pandemic hit, they went virtual and made house calls as well.
What we've recognized is the amount of times we've had to counsel not just the student, but their families through eviction processes or ensuring that they have food. In some cases, running technology, laptop or a cell phone to a student so that they no longer become that statistic within schools' lists of students that can't be found.
The organization is concerned too much of a burden is being placed on schools to meet the need for social and emotional services because of the pandemic. It wants to work with them. Site coordinators are being trained on new monitoring tools for social and emotional learning and trauma. They say 99% of students engage with communities in schools. Coordinators stay in school. Ahead in our lineup, cities are begging the federal government for more money to help people who can't pay mortgages or rent. How some communities are trying to get creative while they wait. Many cultural institutions remain closed because of COVID-19. That includes thousands of museums around the country. As Maya Rodriguez tells us, as museums in our area take steps to reopen their doors, here are the noticeable changes you can expect.
From China to Egypt and beyond, the halls of history span the globe. But it's been lonesome lately in those halls at some of the 35,000 museums across the country.
We, of course, wanted to reopen as soon as we could in as safe a manner as we could.
Melissa Smith is CEO of the Penn Museum in Philadelphia. It's one of the few major museums to recently reopen to visitors after coronavirus restrictions forced them to close their doors for months.
For the most part, it's business as usual with our exhibits.
But first, a task force of 35 museum employees needed to figure out what changes might be needed.
We had to look at a number of things,
including making masks a must, placing hand sanitizing stations throughout the museum, installing clear partitions to protect staff who interact with visitors, marking off benches so people can sit socially distanced, and lining the stairs and floors with arrows, carefully choreographing how visitors move through the exhibits.
They asked us to follow the arrows, and it kind of was a different museum experience, but also I think very helpful.
But there's more.
Some of the exhibits around the museum have touch screens, so visitors can dig a little deeper and learn more. Now, when they come to the museum, a visitor will get a stylus so they can touch the touch screens safely.
Visitors say they don't mind the changes and are just happy for the chance to come back.
I think they're one of the things that I've been missing the most since all the shutdowns started happening.
But one that visitors here are no longer missing.
I love the museum.
In Philadelphia, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
You might have seen them before on your social media feed, all of this Dr. Fauci fan merchandise, whether it's bobbleheads, socks, mugs, shirts, even masks. It's a new craze that's happened as a result of the pandemic. Topps even released these limited baseball cards of Dr. Fauci when he threw the first pitch at a Washington Nationals game. The pitch itself, not a hit, but the cards were. More than 51,000 cards were sold. Chouquette Chocolates in Maryland sells all kinds of treats, but just started selling these chocolates with Dr. Fauci's face a few months ago. The owner says she has an idea as to why these sweets and other Fauci merchandise are so popular.
So you can really think about him as like America's doctor in some ways. And I think that helps people feel a little bit more secure, and just having a little piece of them makes them feel a little bit safer and a little bit happier.
So far, the shop has sold 400 boxes of Fauci chocolates.
All right, one good thing about running the race here in August, we're not dealing with those spring showers that we have so often in the month of May. We've had some pretty nice weather here, and it looks like over the next several days we'll continue with that trend. We've got clouds across central Indiana this afternoon. Temperatures 83 in downtown, 85 in Kokomo, and close to that 90-degree mark in Bloomington. So feeling like the lower 90s for you, even though we've got a north and east breeze around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Radar, most areas are going to stay very quiet this evening, but as we get south of Bloomington and really around the Bedford area, you can see just north of town there, northern Lawrence County, we've had more lightning kind of flare up with that downpour. Not expecting any severe weather, but we also have those showers stretching along I-69 into southeastern portions of Greene County as well. Tonight, mostly cloudy skies, just that isolated downpour with a low of 67, so that rain chance is only about 20%. And as we go into the day on Friday, we'll start things off at 6:30 in the morning. morning here. You see just a very little bit of light green here south of I-70. Most areas should be starting things off nice and dry, and it looks like the bulk of the thunderstorm activity will be off to our east in Ohio. But as we go throughout the day on Friday, more clouds, temperatures making their way back into the 80s, and a chance for a shower storm as we get into the afternoon, with that high of 84 in Indy and 81 in Columbus. As we look at the weekend and beyond here, we've got temperatures that are going to be in the 80s Saturday and Sunday, low rain chances, so a lot of good outdoor time there and great outdoor time as we get into next week with highs in the 70s.
As eviction moratoriums end across the country, homeowners and renters are facing a crisis. Many are on the verge of becoming homeless. Some cities and towns are pleading with Congress for another round of coronavirus relief aid. Chris Conti shows why those federal emergency funds have been a critical lifeline for so many.
The dog days of summer have provided little in the way of relief for Americans on the verge of eviction. One of them is Lovering Hayward, who hasn't had work in months.
I'm searching for employment every day.
With no income coming in, she can't pay her rent.
People are reluctant to say that they need some sort of charity.
It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Amanda Berman is the director of housing and community development in Newton, Massachusetts, a wealthy suburb near Boston. But even in some of the nation's more well-to-do cities, residents aren't immune from the economic impact of the pandemic.
This was there all along. I mean, we've been having a housing crisis forever, and this is just exposing how deep the cracks are.
Through the CARES Act, this city was able to secure $2 million in emergency housing funds. To spread the money out as best they could, Newton decided to assist people in low-income housing with 70% of their rent. 170 families have been helped since March.
You fight and you fight and you fight to get ahead with these things, and something like this just like throws you back really far.
Nationally, 20% of households missed their rent payments last month. Housing experts say that number is likely to skyrocket in September as extra unemployment funding and rental assistance money disappears.
The real estate industry is going to go through massive changes here in the next 12 months.
Jeff Larrabee is an apartment landlord. He's had some tenants not make rent and is advising anyone who's fallen behind on payments to talk to their landlord about options. Right now, with tenants not paying, he's concerned about his own finances.
There's going to be a lot more homelessness. I don't know how we're going to make all the mortgage payments.
Back in Newton, they're trying to help residents in low-income housing as best they can. Instead of paying 70% of people's rent, the city is considering dropping that percentage and reaching out to the Department of Housing and Urban Development to see if any other money is out there.
We got to this point by ignoring the reality, and I don't know. It's pretty scary.
A scary reality that so many Americans are stuck in. I'm Chris Conti reporting.
President Trump did sign an executive order last week meant to prevent evictions, but the order does not offer immediate assistance to help families who are struggling financially and at risk of losing their homes. The FDA is warning about a second toxic chemical that's in some hand sanitizers. In addition to methanol, the FDA says it has also found propanol in these products. This toxin can be deadly and can depress the nervous system. Symptoms of propanol exposure include confusion, decreased consciousness, and a slow pulse, as well as slow breathing. The American Dental Association is not on board with some of the World Health Organization's recommendations surrounding coronavirus. The WHO has recommended putting off dental cleanings and other routine visits as a way to prevent spread of the virus. But the ADA says dentistry is essential health care and says routine visits should not be delayed. Major retailers are looking to help businesses and colleges contain virus spread. Kroger is making deals with corporations so they can get home test kits for their employees. And CVS wants companies and schools to hire them to run virus testing sites. CVS says they can also handle contact tracing and giving out flu shots. Finally, in our lineup, black women are earning a lot less than white men. Black Women's Equal Pay Day today highlights that gap, how the pandemic could be making this worse, and how it may be a wake-up call to fix it. Amazon's business is booming, but the company is cutting ties with some of its third-party delivery companies. This means about 1,200 delivery workers across the country will be out of a job. Amazon has only said it regularly reevaluates its partnerships. Today is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. It takes Black women 8 months longer to the next year to catch up to what white men made on average at the end of last year. Experts say this doesn't just highlight how much work needs to be done. The pandemic has also highlighted how vital Black women workers are in our country. 1 in 3 essential workers right now are Black women.
So now folks are really, Black women in particular, are caught in the crossfire of global pandemic, which is sweeping through our communities and primarily affecting Black and brown folks, and also a failing economy, and on top of that, a compounding wage gap and pay inequities.
Even outside of the pandemic, Black women were losing out on a lot of money each year. Those working as wait staff have already lost about $7,800 this year due to the wage gap. Those working as teachers lost more than $14,000, according to the National Women's Law Center.
Our researchers crunched the numbers, and Black women are going to be losing out on almost $1 million in the 40 years career loss due to this wage gap. And that's incredible it is incredible and devastating thinking about what Black women could pay for with that amount of money.
All that money lost is essential and could have helped Black families deal with the lack of housing, health care, and child care. The National Women's Law Center says more transparency is needed to close the wage gap. That includes having employers disclose how much workers are being paid. For some workers, staying socially distant is tough, especially if they're working together in small spaces. Tomorrow, how people such as construction workers are getting help staying healthy from new technology that looks like an old school pager.
We do have rain chances over the next few days, but they're going to continue to decrease here as we get into the weekend with those high temperatures in the 80s. And looking ahead to next week, we're going to see another shot of some cooler, drier air out of Canada. That will bring our lows into the 50s and highs in the 70s here by Tuesday and Wednesday. Thanks for joining us at 5:30. The news at